Hi, this is Tony Mark for Russell Grether and the Mark and Grether Group. Welcome to the Malibu Podcast.
Malibu, 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 Malibu.
What is this? Is this an Android?
It's like the red phone, red camera phone.
Looks black to me.
Yeah, it's the brand. All right, podcast 2.
All right, thanks for being on the Malibu Podcast. This is my friend Ted McDonald. I've known Ted mostly from family things. Our wives got to be friends. I'm not sure how. I remember being, I think, at a Christmas party at your house and maybe your daughter's birthday, and my daughter was like digging her claws into your daughter and making her cry, and I was like, I spent my entire night just trying to keep my little bully daughter off of your very sweet, wonderful daughter. So it's kind of amazing that you guys have continued to be friends with us, but it's been great.
We're not really friends, Tony. We're not really friends.
It's been great hanging out with you, and appreciate you. We've been watching some of your podcasts and your videos, and I love watching them, so I thought it'd be great just to have you on and try to interview you. And we're covering sort of all things we love about Malibu in our podcast. And for me, a huge part of living in Malibu is just outdoor lifestyle, health and fitness. And you obviously, I work really hard to be able to live in Malibu to do those things, and you somehow have figured out how to get paid to do them and be here. And so you're kind of winning. So I thought I'd go straight to the source and figure out, how you became you, and a lot of just your ideas on how to create a healthy lifestyle. And so I wrote up some questions. If you don't mind, I'll just kind of fire through.
No, absolutely.
Just figure that gives us a good reference point. So so what got you to Malibu? How did you wind up here and doing what you do?
So I initially from New York. I moved out here to go to school, sort of get away from some drama, family drama in New York, personal drama, and then kind of start fresh. And went to UCLA, graduated from UCLA. But before that, I was waiting tables to put myself through school.
Were you a student athlete? Was that part of school? Or?
It was, but I didn't come out here as a student athlete. I came out here to go to school, but not because I played lacrosse at UCLA. I played lacrosse in high school, but did not get a scholarship. It was a club team, so there was no scholarship. My grades got me into UCLA. I sort of took the side door through the scholars program at SMC, as a matter of fact, which I highly recommend for those people who can't use the side door.
Telling my son that if he needs a side door, there's amazing programs.
That's right.
Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I was waiting tables, and there used to be, and I'm sure you're going to remember this, there used to be a restaurant called Carlos and Pepe's.
I was there once a week.
So they
made you wear the tiny little shorts?
I had to wear tiny little shorts. And there was one in Santa Monica and one in Malibu. I started the one in Santa Monica, and then they asked me to cover some shifts in Malibu, and I met a guy, we became friends, and then he moved back to Wichita, Kansas, of all places, and said, hey, I'm leaving this little studio on Las Flores Canyon. Do you want it? And I said, sure, I'll take it. And that was how I started living in Malibu, and that was late 90s. And then went through the drama that I thought I escaped from in New York kind of followed me along with it, and I kind of cleaned myself up from that. So spent some time just, kind of your typical sort of drugs and alcohol story to clean myself up. And thankfully I did. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions I ever did for myself. And during that time, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was acting, and I was writing, and I was directing, and I went ahead and made a film and produced an independent feature film. And it turned out to be a financial mess. Long story short, it was your classic sort of credit card, bombshell story, right? And bomb story. And what I realized is that I would never do that again that way, and I would never do something that I wasn't passionate about doing. And when I was in this place that I was just depressed, kind of, thinking I had cleaned myself up and doing really well for myself, and then sort of got hit again by life circumstance or ignorance in business at the time. And I essentially said, that's it. I'm never going to do anything like that again, someone took me to a yoga class. And I came out of that yoga class. First of all, I was dripping sweat. I could not even hold myself up.
Way harder than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh my gosh. And so I came out of it and I thought, it was just a huge, huge sigh of relief. And I thought, all this drama, that was a lot less now at the time, but everything was going to be okay. I just felt this sense of peace come over me, this sense of satisfaction and contentment. And I found something in that practice for me that just helped me with pretty much the rest. That was the beginning of kind of this path that I took to wellness and fitness. And I had been in my, spiritual practice and getting clean. I had been definitely exploring with meditation and Buddhism. That was around the time of the Tibetan freedom concerts and the Dalai Lama and the Beastie Boys and, all that sort of stuff. So I was aware of it and was kind of playing a little bit here and there and poking my head around and got deeper and deeper. And yoga helped me as an athlete, helped me get deeper into this spiritual practice for me, which was meditation and connecting for me, what I would consider God or, spiritual being.
That was
right?
more of the draw than the physical component.
Well,
You're such a physical guy. I figured, probably.
I think that was the draw to the yoga. In the beginning, it was also physical because I spent years sore.
Yeah, I suck at yoga. I was blown away at how hard yoga is.
Oh yeah,
I haven't been to one of your classes yet, but I'm sure I'll be miserable.
Yeah. You'll be sore again. No, just
I will
kidding.
be miserable. Yeah.
But yeah, it was both. It was both. So I felt like I stopped going to the gym. I stopped working out. I stopped, running, cycling, all I did was yoga 3, 4, 5 days a week. And I was lucky because at the time I was a starving student and this guy had a donation class, Brian Kest, he deserves the credit. And I was able to go and pay $5 if I could, or 20 if I could. And I just got this incredible yoga practice going 3, 4, 5 days a week. And then finally I thought, well, I'm, I can do Warrior 2 forever. So I feel like I need some cardio again. So I started running. I ran 2 miles and I was sore for 4 days. 4 days. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what? I was an athlete my whole entire life. I can't run 2 miles? This is crazy. And I did it a week later and I ran 2 miles. I was sore for 3 days. And I thought, muscle memory, right? It's coming back. And a week later, this was in the later 90s, early 2000. Oh, it was 99, in fact, or 2000, I think, because that's when I ran the rock and roll marathon. So the next weekend I was in my friend's office and he was doing an internet company back in the first .com boom. Everybody was filming everything and just putting it up online, but bandwidth really wasn't there. So a lot of these companies were just getting funded and then dying, right? So he said, hey, we're doing this marathon, let's go. And I said, I'm a yogi now, man. I don't do those things, that's bad for your body.
Had you run marathons before?
Never. It was not even, it was not even in my sphere of consciousness, not part of my goals, nothing like that. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll go run your 10 miles. And because he sort of suckered me in by saying, you can run 3 minutes, we're going to run 3 minutes and walk a minute, and run 3 minutes and walk a minute. And I thought, well, anybody can do that, I mean, maybe not anybody, but at the time, that's what I thought.
Sounds like a good plan.
Right, exactly. And that's how they trained for it.
For the marathon?
There was a woman in the group, and she and I said, well, we don't want to do the whole marathon that way. Let's just run as far as we can, and then we'll do maybe 5 minutes of running, 1 minute of walking. And technically, that's called the Fartlek Technique, because this guy, Fartlek, created that technique, and it's better for your body. And I was still sore for 4 days after I did the marathon. But I did it. The first one,
I did it.
6 weeks later, we were driving to San Diego, and there was all these people, and the expo, and the hotel, and the energy, and I loved it. And for me, that was another shift in my athlete world. I became an endurance athlete. It was a total shift in my entire view of life, really, because when I crossed the finish line, well, before I crossed the finish line, I crossed mile 25, 26.2 miles in a marathon. come across mile 25. There's these big balloons across, roads closed, big balloons across, people with cowbells and singing and cheerleaders. The Rock and Roll Marathon is an amazing event. And this was its second year in existence, or third.
Vegas, or?
This is San Diego.
Oh, they have
This
San
was
Diego.
before they had any other event,
That was
and
the
it wasn't a
first one.
big conglomerate around the world, right? It was their second or third time they did it. And it was 2000. I'll never forget, June 4th or 5th or 3rd or whatever. And I remember going under those balloons, and all of a sudden, as I'm running, I start weeping. I'm like, and I have my glasses on, and I'm thinking, my nipples are bleeding, right? I'm like, what is going on? Why? I'm overcome by this emotion, and hoping no one sees me. And then finally, I realized, oh my gosh. Like, I could stop right now and walk the next mile. I get the chills telling the story now, which was almost 20 years later, and I'm going to finish a marathon. And never before in my life, 6 weeks prior, did I think I would ever do it. For me, it was, I'm a little guy from Long Island. It was all professional athletes and Olympians who did marathons. Never even in my sphere of consciousness. I never knew. I think my cousin's wife had done a marathon. That was the only person I knew. And all of a sudden, there I was, and it was. So when I finally crossed the finish line, I didn't walk the last mile. I did run it in pain, but I crossed, and I thought, man, if this is something that's in my life that I didn't know about 6 weeks ago, and it gave me this incredible euphoric experience, what else is there in the universe that I don't know about that can provide this experience for me if I put in a little bit of work? And so I thought, well, I got to go do a triathlon.
So that was next triathlon?
That was next. That same year is when I did the Malibu Triathlon.
Did you do the sprint, or did you jump all the way in?
There was no.
Just the sprint?
That's right. Yeah, this was almost 20 years, right? It was 2000. Yeah. So it was.
Did you know Michael back then?
I didn't know him back then. Nope.
So you just went and did it?
Yeah, I just went and did it, and I thought, because it was the next evolution for me. I wanted to do a triathlon. I got in the pool and I swam 10 lengths in the pool and got out and thought, there's no way, I can't do it. I have to swim a half mile in the ocean. How am I going to do that? But I just went back again and I swam 12, and then I swam 16, and then I swam 20, and then I finally got in the ocean, and then I finally went to a couple lifeguard stations, and then I went a couple more lifeguard stations, and swam by myself. And and then I finally did it, and then the next year I went back, and the next year was 2001, after 9/11. And it was the weekend after 9/11, or I think it was the weekend after 9/11. I just remember my brother worked at 5 World Trade Center, and I didn't know if he was alive until 2:30 our time, which was 5:30 East Coast time. And so, being from New York and having my family in the city, and I was so connected to that experience, and it was just horrific. And I remember sitting there at the race as the national anthem's playing, just having this incredible emotional experience, And that's one of the things, not to go on and on, but it's one of the things that keeps me coming back. It's to watch. I did the New York City Triathlon back in 2004 and 5, and I'll never forget finishing the race. My mom and dad were still alive at the time, and my mom was in a wheelchair, and everybody's like schlepping her around New York City in a wheelchair. And we finished the race. They're waiting in Central Park, and it was hot. It was disgusting, and the bikes were all on Riverside Drive, and this woman who was easily 100 pounds overweight, she comes back from the bike and is about to start running, and everybody who's cleaning their stuff up drops their stuff and just starts clapping for this woman, because that she's struggling. But she did it, and she went out there and she did it. And that's the thing is and for me, it's one of the reasons, to bring it back to Malibu, is one of the reasons why I love Malibu so much is because it provides the opportunities like that, not just in the race and, in the Malibu Triathlon or the Malibu half marathon, but just in our oceans, I guess there's only one ocean, right? Pacific for us.
Technically.
Yeah, in this area. But in the trails,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the road, there's always an opportunity to improve yourself from a physical and mental and spiritual side. I think there's a spiritual aspect to getting out in the ocean and swimming. I mean, I feel like there is communing with nature.
Yeah,
You know,
I call it getting salt water on my brain, but yeah, I definitely feel transformed. But yeah, it's amazing. Like even I didn't have a lot of time to exercise today, but you're helping me train for the half marathon and then the triathlon. So I had a little bit of time. I just went out my door and did, a 4-mile run with the dog, and it's just an amazing place we live that, you can do that and you're kind of immediately out into beauty and nature, and it definitely changes my perspective. So that was one of the other questions I had for you, just in your helping people manage health and lifestyle. How do you recommend balancing just all the demands of life? I mean, you're going to be a dad twice over now soon.
Any day now.
Is it any day?
It is any day. We got a message from the nurse yesterday. It was like, I think you guys won't make it another week.
So if you're not at training on Friday, I'll know why.
That's right.
That's great. So, I mean, you obviously have a lot on your plate too. You have a fun job. You get to be outdoors and teach people how to do fun things, but you have a lot of demands in your time. So how do you carve out, or how do you recommend people carve out that chunk of life for exercise and health?
Yeah, I think that the best way is scheduling it. I mean, I don't think there's scheduling it and finding accountability partners. That's it. And I think is
that a big part of what you are as a trainer then?
Just sure.
Stay accountable.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the clients that I work with, will say, if you didn't show up at my door, I wouldn't do it. Simple as that, right? I mean, it's, and but also it's fun. I mean, we go out there on Friday mornings.
I have a blast. Yeah,
right.
I never thought I'd enjoy running. I always hated running. The idea of the triathlon kind of propelled me into that, because I was sort of at a real low point in my life, and I went and watched the triathlon. I got dared to do it, but I chickened out. I was like 30 pounds overweight. It was miserable, and I went and watched my first triathlon, and it was just this amazing energy, just everyone, 3,000 people going through all that, and I wanted to do it. So the next year I signed up, and I was the same. I mean, I was literally like, I couldn't run a mile. I ran for like 10 minutes and thought I was going to die. Couldn't swim, couldn't bike. I didn't even have a bike at the time. But as the year went on, it kind of transformed my life. And, and it wasn't just my health that got better, but I started actually being better at my job and better in my relationships, and I was a better dad. And so I realized that it's a component in life I can't do without. But I have 3 kids now and a wife and bills, and so it just gets harder and harder and harder to figure out ways to do that.
Yeah.
I was looking through your bio a bit, and it, with Tour de France just finishing, I listened to a lot of Lance Armstrong podcasts. I've never actually watched one, but I listened to a lot. But it said you trained you did yoga for the BMC team at the time?
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
So I have been a long-time Lululemon ambassador. When Lululemon first came to the States, I was their first round of ambassadors. That was 2003, so about 16 years ago now. And the Chip Wilson is the guy who started Lululemon up in Canada, and his brother is Brett Conrad. And Brett is now he's in finance, and his wife has this incredible this incredible leadership thing called Lightyear Leadership, which is just a great platform for people being leaders in their community. But anyway, he was also an endurance athlete, and so we just started training together. And they were looking for cool yoga teachers, and I think one of the things that you don't find very often in the yoga teaching world is a yoga teacher who also will go do an endurance event. It's not typically a normal thing, right? So it was weird that I was a triathlete and a yoga teacher. Or after that triathlon, I went and did, because Michael Epstein did the high-tech adventure racing series. I don't know if you remember that.
I didn't do any of them. I vaguely remember.
Yeah, they were so fun. And then that became the Balance Bar adventure racing series. And they were so fun. It was just an incredible thing because we get to run and ride and kayak in the ocean all around here. And that's how I got to know all these trails around here. Now it's you know, I used to say that there's 570 miles of trails in my backyard, right? Which is incredible. I have this incredible Santa Monica mountain range all throughout Malibu, essentially.
Right.
That
so
is
did
just
you have the
plethora.
studio at that point, or was that?
No. The studio came in 2009, I think. The first one in 2009 on Point Doom, and then the second one 2010.
Okay.
But
for BMC, were you here then training, or did you go?
so
Is that
so
their
that
British
happened.
team?
So it's an American team. It had a because it no longer exists. But it was an American team with a Swiss sponsor. So BMC is bike manufacturing company, but they also make bikes, and that was the main source. The sponsorship came from a guy named Andy Reese. Andy Reese made a lot of his money through Phonak hearing aids. There used to be a cycling team called Phonak.
Right.
So he started funding the BMC team, but some of the, royalty of cycling in America were part of that team. Jim Akowitz, who they call Och, who they call the godfather of American cycling. He's the guy that started Team 7-Eleven back in the 70s, essentially.
So before
with
Postal.
That's right. Before Postal, so it was basically 7-Eleven, then that morphed into Motorola, and then Motorola became Postal. So they basically discovered Lance, right? But Eric Heiden was on that first Team 7-Eleven. So anyway, Lululemon sent me to Spain to work with these guys. Wow. And Lululemon sponsored that company because they were trying to expand into Europe. And they thought, well, we're sponsoring this professional cycling team. We're a yoga-inspired company. We're going to give them casual clothing. So all the pro athletes and staff had to, if they were doing interviews, be wearing Lululemon. But they said, we'll provide some yoga for you guys if you want. And the team said, sure, yeah. And I went, and they just loved it. And it's interesting. I mean, this is a whole other subject, but cycling is steeped in tradition. So a lot of people aren't really so open to doing yoga.
Yeah, I can see that.
But for me, it was great because here I am as an athlete, and this is one of the things that just leads back to that combo of athlete yoga person. And I could speak athlete to them, whereas if they had somebody going in there chanting with beads, it might not work so much. These guys are hardcore, and they won the Tour de France the first year I was with them.
Year.
Wow. 2011.
So you were around for all that.
Oh my God, it was incredible.
That's amazing.
Just amazing. And even now, so the race that just finished. So Greg Van Avermaet won the gold medal in Rio in 2016. He's a friend of mine. Mickey Shar, his right-hand man, is a friend. Like there's just so many. TJ Van Garderen, who's the American hope still. He crashed out because he broke his hand this race. But all these guys I worked with on that team for over the course of 8 years. Wow. So now they've all kind of dispersed and gone on to different teams. But anyway, so that's kind of how that came about. And it's incredible to be able to be part of, the people who are the best in the world.
That's amazing. And so for your yoga studio, was that something you kind of fell into, or was that a very conscious effort that you wanted to build that up and have that here?
It was not a conscious effort at all. There used to be something called Malibu Yoga, which was back when I started, and that was in existence. And then there was the sign over the Malibu Yoga sign that said space available. So everybody basically came in, all my students came in, and they were like, what do you mean the space available? Why is there not, right? We want a place to come to yoga. And I said, look, I don't know what's going on. And then the guy who ran it, he said, yeah, the landlords are jacking up our rent, and so I'm not gonna pay. And so they just put the sign up. And that's when I said, all right, look, here's a community. There's no yoga studio. Can't be that hard to find a space, open it up, and put a couple of speakers up and collect money and turn the heat on and off, So that's what I did essentially at Point Doom. At the time, I was renting space at the old Malibu Performing Arts Center, which is now City Hall. But there used to be a little ballet room in the bottom left-hand near the theater. Remember that? And I rented space there, and I just basically started collecting emails. I had 60 emails, and I emailed everybody and said, hey, I'm going to open a studio. Do you guys want Point Doom section or near in town? And it was basically like a 60-40 split, and people said 60% said Point Doom. I said, okay, talked to the landlord at Pavilions and negotiated a deal to get a little space. And it was a small little space, and I just created a space basically where, you know, teachers would rent space from me, and then that would cover the expenses, and then, you know, I would profit from my own classes. And then down at the Malibu Country Mart, I looked at some other space, and we had these great 20-foot ceilings, and I thought, oh man, we gotta have this space. I just felt like there's so much more potential. And then I've been able to create this whole aerial program for a lot of the teenage girls in Malibu. And this is, you know, it's funny. As a yoga guy and an athlete, it's great, but the business itself, we have the only public ballet floor in Malibu. There used to be a ballet studio, but so we have a couple ballet teachers that will rent our space. We used to do a production of the Nutcracker. They used to rehearse the production of the Nutcracker at our studio. Now so I put in this big sprung floor. And again, this was just an entrepreneurial idea because I needed to somehow utilize the dead time.
Space, yeah.
And so then, because we had these great big 20-foot ceilings, I happened to know an aerialist at the time, and I said, hey, why don't you come and look at my space? I think there's an opportunity. And she said, oh, this is incredible. You can have the most beautiful aerial studio in all of LA.
What is that, by the way? What's an aerialist?
So aerial, remember Pink at the Grammys who came down from the ceiling and flipped? That's a silk. They call it silks. And it's amazing. I mean, the stuff that these people can do, and it's like a trapeze artist. It's just unbelievable. So we found a teacher who works with kids, and now we have girls from 8 to 15 come in, and they come, you know, we have basically 6, 7, 8 classes that are booked every semester, and they just love it. And I remember asking, and it's hard, don't get me wrong. I mean, you use a lot of upper body strength. You got to do a lot of pull-ups. And initially I thought, oh, these Malibu moms are going to love it, right? And they would come once and go, oh yeah, it was great. I did it. It was fun. But that's it. It didn't become a regular part of their fitness routine. But the kids, it's mind-blowing. And they love it because there's a performance at the end of the semester. And I remember asking one of the moms, and this was so sweet and just made me feel so great, because I said, so how are the girls liking it? And she said, Ted, it's one of the greatest things because it builds their confidence so much. And as a sort of bystander, but to have a small influence on a young girl's confidence in the world is so gratifying for me. You know, just to be able to know that that's happening in that space makes me want to keep the space forever.
I definitely see the world differently having a daughter, you know, and knowing there's things like that out there.
Yeah.
My daughter stops torturing your daughter. Maybe she can,
right,
come
exactly.
sometime.
I think my daughter's starting to learn how to protect herself now, but
That's
you know, your daughter's older brother, I think, is part of the reason.
There's a lot going on, yeah, for sure.
But, no, we love you guys, so it's great.
Wanted to ask you just a couple triathlon questions.
Sure, absolutely.
So anyway, thank you for training our team this year.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. That's been amazing. I've done, I think this is my 10th triathlon.
Wow.
So, you know, I've done a lot, and I thought I kind of knew everything about everything, but I honestly have learned a lot from you, even just the last few weeks. Never in my life did I ever warm up to do a run. I thought jogging was warming up to do a run, and that warm-up routine's been super helpful. You know, I've been thinking a lot about the nutrition and kind of supplement side of that, and I haven't really gotten too far. I mean, I've always eaten decently, but how much of that do you have training in that as well? Like, how much of the nutrition and supplement side of performance do you delve into, and what would be worth knowing for triathlon?
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot. Because as an endurance athlete, and to me, endurance is basically anything you're going to do more than, let's say, 2 hours, right? 2 to 3 hours, right?
Is that kind of where your body will start failing if you haven't managed it correctly?
Yeah, I think you can probably, you know, you can definitely use the stores in your body, glycogen stores in your body, and you could even use the fat if you had to for hours and hours and hours and hours. But ultimately, you're going to bonk if you just wake up and you start going after About 90 minutes or so, right? You're going to start to feel it. You'll start feeling it a little bit before. So at some point you need to replenish. And there's, again, this could be a whole discussion, right? But I think for the most part right now, there's kind of two schools of thought. One is fat burning, one is sugar burning. Sugar burning, pre-energizer drink with sugar, gels during the race, protein shakes, bananas, bars, more gels, right?
You do all this?
And
Are you a gel
I
guy?
have in the past, and it depends. So now I have I'm more now on the fat burning side because what I learned through some blood work, just my regular blood, well, actually I shouldn't say regular. So this was a deep dive into some blood work, found that I was insulin resistant, which is pre-diabetes. And my wife lovingly said, I don't want to bring a child into the world knowing that the dad is going to possibly die or get diabetes in 10 or 15 years. And that was
This is like recently.
This
You
was-
were already super fit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so had zero symptoms. And it was the blood work that showed, and it wasn't even my glucose, which a lot of people look at glucose levels or HbA1c, which is kind of a 3-month snapshot of your glucose level. But it was, for me, more in the fat tissues, and it was a little bit deeper dive, which you can do nowadays. But anyway, so I had to, I called my friend Mark Sisson, who is a local Malibu guy, and he's got Primal Nutrition and Primal Blueprint and all that. And he said, Ted, welcome to the club. That's exactly what happened to me. And he was a 2-hour, 18-minute marathoner. I mean, super fast in his heyday. And was on, I think he was on the board of USA Triathlon for a little while. But anyway, he's, now he's ultimate Frisbee all the time, but super ripped and just a fat burning guy. So he's low carbs. So the thing is, what I do now is I've transferred over to fat burning as opposed to sugar burning. And what that allows me to do is oxidize fat. And any athlete that's going a really long time has to oxidize fat and use it as fuel. And but it takes 3 to 4 weeks to kind of get your body to oxidize fat on a more regular basis.
So does that mean you're consuming like a chocolate milk instead of a gel, or?
No, during a race, you're consuming nut butter instead of a gel, or, avocados or some seeds and maybe a little bit. So what I'll do now is I'll sip a gel over the course of 2 hours. So I'll take the 27 grams of carbohydrates in there, instead of whacking it down in one gulp, which is what I used to do. I'll take a little sip. The glucose will fuel my brain, but my body's using fat to oxidize to keep me moving forward. I'm not winning races, right? So for me, I don't need to be going, as fast as some other professional athletes. I'm going as fast as I can go. I'm pushing myself. So I'm above my limit in a race if I've trained properly. But at the same time, what I want to do is be as efficient as I can be. And there are ways where you can just supplement a little bit through some hydration stuff and through some different nut butters and things that are higher in fat content. There's an extra step in processing before your body can utilize it. So it takes a little bit longer. So you have to look a little bit further into the future, as opposed to a gel, which is you take it, it immediately goes to your bloodstream, and then you're shooting, right? The Tour de France guys, they try to get 50, 60, 70, 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour into their blood. So they're drinking Coca-Colas, they're having paninis, they're doing gels, they're doing bars, they're doing whatever they can, because they know they're burning way more than that. In an hour, they're burning 1,000 calories.
In an hour.
So yeah, and it's just super intense. So they're just trying to do that. There is an argument that depending on what kind of cyclist you are, you can fat burn more than you need to sugar burn. It's hard to do both. You can't really you can't become a sugar burner and then, I'm going to burn fat and then all of a sudden burn sugar again.
But you train this way, so you'll train with those, having that almond butter, whatever it is you're eating.
That's right.
Instead of the gels, and just start converting your body, getting used to that well before you're going to race, doing that.
100%. In a race that'll be 3 hours, let's say. So a marathon for me nowadays is probably 3:10, 3:15. If I train really hard, maybe a goal is to break 3 hours. We'll see. But I won't have any solid food at all during that time. So I'll have eggs and avocado for breakfast, and then I'll have some hydration before the race, and then I'll start the race. I'll have a little bit of a kick, a little caffeine kick from green tea, ginseng. I don't like having coffee so early in the morning. I'll drink it kind of midday, sip it a little bit, but caffeine is definitely a performance enhancer. So if you're a caffeine person before the race, feel free to have some caffeine. I just think because it's gonna be a diuretic that you don't wanna, depending on how long the race is. Mm-hmm. But anyway, for 3 and a half hour race, I won't. If I was gonna do a half Ironman, that's going to be 5 hours or 6 hours, or when I did my Ironman last year, it was 11 and a half hours. So I have
That was your first Ironman?
My first Ironman, and I had a full nutrition plan. So I had, I would have the waffles, and I'd have bars, and I just would have a bite or two, and that's all higher carbohydrate stuff. But you're burning so much, and I would, instead of having it all in one serving, one shot, I would have it over 2 or 3 hours. And that was my way of staying low carb during the races.
I never understood the idea of body failure until I'd done some triathlons. I'd been tired, but I did this bike ride. Dan Berku and
yeah, sure.
And Dan talked me into doing. He created this event he calls the Uberman.
Right.
And I think there's only like 5 people that do it, but Dan convinced me to ride from San Diego, I think he started in San Diego. Anyway, it was far. So we did this bike ride. It was like, I think I did 85 miles that day. And I felt really good until I hit right about 60 miles. And then my body just completely failed. Like I had to get off the bike. I went and laid down. We made it to like Deer Creek. We just passed through Malibu. We made it to Deer Creek, and my body just completely stopped. Yeah. And then Dan had some chocolate, and so I ate some chocolate and sat around, and then I think I had like an avocado sandwich or something. Right. And then about 15 minutes later, my body kind of turned back on, and I could keep riding. But I'd never experienced total and complete failure before, so it gave me an idea that you really actually there's some science to that when you take your endurance sports to the next level.
That's right.
Then you definitely have to map that out.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, and I think there's, and again, this discussion could go on for a long time in this particular topic, but I think a lot of athletes, and I'll discuss this in the team, in one of the team meetings, but a lot of people overeat. They think, oh, I'm a triathlete now. I'm doing the Malibu Triathlon. I can eat all this stuff. And it's actually not really the case. And it sort of shows that even though people start exercising, whether it's running or something, that they're not losing the weight that they could, if that's their goal. Right. For some people, it's just to do the race. They don't care about losing weight. But what the science shows is that people who start exercising don't lose as much weight as they could because they start eating more instead of eating the same and exercising more. But I think regarding the supplement question, I think what happens is people go, oh, every half an hour I need to have a gel, or every 45 minutes I need to have the gel. But the truth is, in my opinion, they probably haven't tested themselves enough. If you go 3 hours and then you conk out, you're gonna need some chocolate and an avocado sandwich or whatever, right? Yeah. But I don't think people know. I would recommend the first hour. So what I'll do in that race is I'll swim and then have a little hydration. So I know I'm hydrated. And then I'll have more hydration than maybe a little bit of caffeine to go from the bike to the run. Because the race is short, in my opinion. It's an hour and a half. Yeah. 2 hours.
Are you
max.
doing an hour and a half?
I don't know. I forget. What did we do last year? I think
it was an hour and a half. I think it was pretty good. I think it was like an hour 45 or something.
Maybe. Yeah, it was pretty close.
I think you were a little better than me. Yeah.
But only running. I'm still chasing you. I'm still chasing you on the swim. But anyway, so yeah, there's a whole science, and one of the main things is to train with the stuff you're going to use during the course. During the race. Yeah. Get used to it, get your stomach used to it, get your legs used to it, and see what and that's why we train. I mean, so hopefully when race day comes, everybody's happy and excited.
Right. Yeah, I was always tempted to want to do all these new things on race day, and I've learned over the years it was just a really bad idea to introduce a new gel or something I've never tried before.
That's right. Shoes.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. All right. So how do people find you if they want to train with you or
Yeah.
yoga or so 5 Points Yoga?
So 5 Point Yoga is there's a studio at the Malibu Country Mart, and then my own personal site is teddymcdonald.com. They called me Teddy when I was born, and it was Teddy until I was in 10th grade, and I said I'm Ted now. But
Ted.
there's another Ted McDonald, so I'm back to Teddy now. It doesn't
Okay.
matter what you call me. But the website is Teddy McDonald. And then just my new corporate wellness company, which is teamworks.us. So I'm excited about that, and just working with teams like yourselves.
So
right?
that's the company that's training us right now?
Yeah.
Teamworks?
So basically, this is we'll go into companies and do corporate wellness stuff and executive health coaching stuff or train for races.
That's great.
So that's exciting, and so we appreciate you guys.
No, you've been
being one of the
amazing.
clients.
As I said, I've done a bunch of those triathlons, and I'm learning a ton from you. The team really loves it, so thank you.
Cool. Yeah, my pleasure, man.
Thanks
for having me.
talking to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on Malibu Podcast. Malibu, Malibu, Malibu.